Hi, this is Svetlana from Cosplay, and today I'm going to show you another cosplay crafting video. So Hoyoverse asked me to bring one of my favorite characters from Genshin Impact to life, and I chose Beidou because she's absolutely amazing and I love her. So in this video I'm going to show you how I make the whole costume completely from scratch, and I tell you, sewing is clearly not my strength. If you're one of the few people left who have not heard of Genshin Impact yet, it's an amazingly fun open world adventure game with a whole lot of cool characters to choose from. I love the game, so I'm super happy that I could make this amazing project in collaboration with Hoyoverse. It's like a dream come true. However, picking a character to cosplay was really not easy. Genshin has so many amazing designs to choose from, and there are even more new characters being released almost every month. One of them was always very special to me though, Beidou, the captain of the Crux. I'm a huge fan of ships and I like strong female characters in leading roles, so she's just perfect. She has been in my team from the moment I got her as well. Plus, she's able to drink anyone else under the table, which I think is always a plus. And if you're interested in playing Genshin Impact as well and want to help us with those collaborations, just use the link in the video description down below. Also, these videos take a ton of work to create, so every like, click, share, comment is highly appreciated. Thank you very much. But now, let's start crafting! Even if you might not see it at the beginning, Beidou's costume isn't as simple as it first appears. It has a ton of tiny details, a dress with a unique shape, and I'm sure all those swirls on her flappies won't be easy to achieve. And the most challenging part, sewing is clearly not my strength. So wish me luck with this project. And to start easy, I decided to do the Capelet first. My reference all the time was the game's fashion archive, by the way. First, I grabbed my dress form and began pinning some cheap white cotton onto it. This way, I was able to experiment quick and easy and got the pattern for the back super fast. Now up to the front, which I also cut out freehand, as you can see. Well, I think this looked already pretty fine. After mirroring it to the other side, this was the result. Now let's copy that to a proper material. I found this amazing red silk in a shop in Düsseldorf, and it was just perfect for Beidou. It has just the right amount of shine and looks like something a captain would wear. Next step was to trace the pattern and cut the fabric out carefully. Then I used wonder clips to fold over the edges and sewed all around the border. For the lining, I used this purple lining material, cut it out and attached it with a ton of pins onto the capelet. Now I just cut off some extra fabric and began hand stitching the lining all around the edges. This step took quite a while, but I liked the result far better than using a machine. Since the sides of my cape would be folded over though, I actually had to split off the tip on each side and add more red silk here. Then the rest was again sewn on by hand. Well, and this was the result. On to the details. The cape needed some black and gold decorations all around. To create these, I made some paper templates, which I then traced to black pleather. The details also got a nice decorative seam all around the edges. And then I just glued them on using my Gütermann HT2 fabric glue. Adding the details took quite some time, but Zelda made sure I didn't mess up anything. For the golden parts, I've used this pleather here and just repeated all the steps previously. So, what do you say? Looks pretty good so far, right? I wasn't done just yet though. Next up was the fur trim at the top. For this one, I grabbed a large piece of paper and drew on the shape I needed. I cut it out and tried to decide which fake fur I wanted to use. The longer one seemed nice to me, so I traced my pattern, cut it out carefully, pinned together the edges, connected it with my sewing machine, and hand sewed push buttons for the attachment. To style the fur a bit, I also used my steamer and some hairspray. As you can see, the attachment worked out nicely. Really like the final look. Just a few minor things were missing now, like this little golden rope ribbon at the back, the tassels on the end of my cape flappies, and these cool golden details on my left shoulder. All of these were just hand sewn on, and voila, my cape was done. This was just a small costume piece though, and as you saw, it already took a long time to make. Now you know what I meant when I said that Beidou's outfit doesn't look that complicated, but it really is. Okay, it was time to tackle the dress. Since it has a really unique shape and a lot of details, I couldn't just use any pre-made pattern here and had to make everything from scratch. So as always, I wrapped myself completely in plastic wrap and duct tape. It's the easiest way to get all the important shapes of the dress. Benni obviously had to help me here. Cool, right? Now I cut myself free, separated the patterns and transferred them to white cotton. I combined a few of the shapes and pinned them all to my dress form. This already looked pretty good. To create the flappies, I added a bit more fabric at the bottom, drew on the shape, cut it out and pinned it on as well. So far so good. Next, I traced the shapes again to get a cleaner version of my patterns and sewed finally the mock-up. And this was the result. Since I was happy with the fit, it was time to transfer it to my red silk. The only thing I changed when transferring all my pieces was that I closed the back of my dress. Without the open back, my dress was fitting much better and the collar part wouldn't constantly slip down. Plus, it was all hidden under my cape anyway, so nobody would notice. After using a ton of pins and sewing everything together, this was the base. Now I added plenty of wonder clips all around the edges and finished them with my sewing machine. To close the dress at the back, I've used a zipper. Base shape done. Fits me like a glove. Getting this part right was actually the most challenging part of the project. Just like with the cape, my dress obviously also needed some lining. For this, I simply repeated the same steps as with my cape. I traced all the patterns again, connected the pieces, pinned it over the inside of my dress, and then painstakingly over several days hand sewed it on. Looks so easy and fast in the video, right? Worth it though. Now I also needed black and golden pleather decorations again. The process here was pretty much the same as for my cape. I made some patterns, cut out the material and glued them into place. Easy! Some parts were more difficult though, so Benni helped me out. For example, he drew the wavy shapes for my flappies in Adobe Illustrator. This drawing helped me a lot to cut out the black base shape. I added then some heat and bond material to the back, traced the shape and cut everything out. Meanwhile, Benni sent his drawing over to our Flux laser cutter and cut out all the golden details I needed next. I'm really happy we got this machine since it sped up my work a lot here. Then I just applied some good old fabric glue and stuck everything together. Super pretty, right? I only had to secure everything with some more glue, iron on this element, and my wavy flappy was done. For the inside, I again used my beloved glue to attach all those lines carefully. Absolutely love the result. So happy how everything turned out. Obviously the front flappy needed a few details as well, so I drew some more patterns, cut them out and glued them on. Benni also laser cut me one more decor. A few small details here and there, and it was time for the accessories. Benni found here a nice collection of Beidou accessories from the Dangerous Ladies, ready to be printed out. Why create something from scratch when it's already there, ready to be used, right? I put a link to it in the video description for you. To print these out, we used our Anycubic resin printer. We just needed to wash the pieces, remove the support, cure them in UV light, and after a tiny bit of sanding, they were ready to be spray painted in shiny gold. I think they came out really pretty. To attach those details to my dress, I also used the same fabric glue as before. It's really strong. Next, I made a simple fake leather belt, glued on some of the 3D printed details, and hand sewed it all to my dress. This part here was just applied with a simple hair clip that I sewed onto the back. Another pretty golden accessory came to the front here and a few more to the back. Almost done now. Just some white swirls were missing. 4 of them were glued to the front and a few more to the back. And here was the finished dress so far. So happy how all the details turned out. How do you like it? Almost done now, I promise. The dress would not be complete without a proper bra though. I grabbed here one of my well-padded push-ups and covered it in duct tape. Once I got my patterns, I traced them to black pleather, cut everything out, pinned all parts together and connected them with my sewing machine. Easy peasy. Next, I folded over the edges, finished them, and hand sewed the result onto my bra. Benni meanwhile printed and painted me both silver details at the front. I used here some push buttons for the attachment, and as you can see, they work greatly. And now, with the bra, my whole dress was finally finished. It's actually very comfy and you cannot believe how proud I was of the result. I didn't mess it up, yay! But since we only had 6 weeks to finish everything, time was of the essence. Beidou's Electrovision came next. A good friend of mine, Beidou Cosplay, who is making some beautiful visions herself, actually offered to help me out here. The frame was actually a relatively simple 3D model. Benni sent it over to our resin printer and after it was finished, he washed, cleaned and cured it. Then he handed it over to the Will, who sanded it a bit and gave it a golden paint job. The base of the stone was also a 3D print covered with a glossy primer. My friend used some Legos to create a wall and closed it using petroleum jelly. Then she mixed and filled in a 2-part silicone that was fully cured after a few hours. Then the true fun began. After taking out the stones, she mixed a 2-part clear resin with some pigments and filled up the mold to the halfway point. Why only halfway, you might ask? Well, after it was cured, she actually stuck a reflective vinyl cut on top, filled up the rest with more resin and even added some glitter. This way, after it was fully cured and demolded, the stones looked really pretty. They just had to be glued onto the frame and Beidou's vision was done. Thanks so much to Beidou Cosplay for your help. I love it. Okay, just a few more parts before my cosplay is finished. Let's move on to the gloves next. Just like we all did in kindergarten, I started by tracing the shape of my arm with a pen. After adding a bit of sew allowance, I cut this out and separated it into 3 parts. This was just so I could get the same decorative seams like in my reference. Then I traced everything to a stretchy black pleather, sewed all parts together again and connected it with a further fabric shape of my arm. As you can see here, I then sewed all around the edges, cut away the excess material as well as the fingertips and turned it inside out. Fits like a glove! Next, I cut out the pattern for an additional layer, traced here a bit, cut there a bit, clipped, sewed and folded the result over. More clips, more seams, got the thing, did some hand stitching and simply glued this layer then on as well. The golden anchor details were again laser cut by Benni and then stuck on with even more adhesive. Just a few more golden trims that I cut out and attached to the back, as well as a small self-made black belt that got a nice 3D printed belt buckle made by Benni. I only had to stick these on here and my gloves were already done. This was fun. Totally love how it turned out as well. Okie dokie. Beidou's stockings were next on the list. To get the base, I began by tracing an old leggings to the same black pleather I used for my gloves. Then I cut out and sewed together both parts to get this nicely fitting pair of stockings. I obviously had to do quite some adjustments here, but let's pretend everything worked on the first try. Just had to cut the stockings to the right length and finish the edges. To prevent them from falling down, I grabbed some Spanx shapewear next. Just put them on, got into the stockings next, pinned everything on, added a crazy amount of extra pins, and finally sewed stockings and Spanx into one piece. Those stockings will hold for an eternity onto my tights now. So far for the base. Next to the shoes. I actually found a pair that were pretty close to what I needed. They just required a little bit of adjustment. So I traced some shapes with a bit of tape and used these patterns to cover a few areas in golden vinyl. Already much better, right? I also added a few swirls at the back, plus a red gem at the front. So these were my shoes. Now back to the stockings. Okay, next the golden details. The easiest way to make these was actually to draw more tape patterns. Getting the shape right here was kind of tricky and Benni helped me a bit again. However, after pulling them off, he could easily recreate the shapes in Adobe Illustrator and send them over to our laser cutter. Did I already tell you how much I love this machine? Gluing anything to a stretchy material is tricky though, so I had to do this while wearing the stockings. I taped everything in place and then slowly glued my way from the top to the bottom. But it worked! The glue held nicely and my stockings looked great, don't you think? Next up, I needed to make the 5 flappies. For these, I drew a simple shape on paper, traced it twice onto my black fabric and sewed them together. Again, Benni laser cut me the anchor shape out of golden vinyl and I simply glued it on into the right place. By now you know how it goes, right? Both flappies then got sewn together at the front and each leg also got a pretty tassel and rope ribbon. The attachment for these parts were also rather simple. 4 push buttons hand sewn onto the inside, plus their counterparts sewn on directly onto the stockings while I was wearing them. And voila, Beidou's legs were done. I really love how they look, especially in combination with the dress. Here you can see all of the parts together for the first time. How do you like it? Almost done! Just a wig was missing now for my costume to be complete. Beidou's hairstyle was rather tricky though, since she has an eye patch, an earring and a complicated knot tied behind her head, held together by a shiny hairpin. Lots of different pieces and layers, so let's do this. I actually bought my wig one tone brighter than Beidou's actual color, since dark brown hair can always end up looking like a black blob in photos. Plus I wanted my hair to be really full, so to begin I actually glued in a few extra wefts with, you guessed it, my favorite fabric glue. Then, after I was satisfied, I gave it to my friend Flo from Beidou Cosplay. My wig styling skills are really not that good to pull off such a complicated project, so I asked for some professional help here. Anyway, Flo began by figuring out the general shape of how the hair flows and connects at the back. Then she separated the entire head into different sections and pinned these into place. Some parts also got trimmed down and carefully heat-shaped. It was really fascinating to see her magic and I'm sure I would need years of practice to reach her level. She actually had the genius idea to separate the main hair and the knot into 2 individual pieces. So after she sewed together the back sections, she actually cut off the hair here. Then she also carefully went over the entire wig with a dark airbrush color to add some shadows. This really added a lot to the overall look. Meanwhile, Benni was working on Beidou's hairpin. Since he wanted this piece to be really lightweight, he printed it in ABS instead of resin this time. This also meant a bit more sanding for him though. So he sanded and spray primed and sanded some more until the surface was so shiny you could see your reflection. Then Benni sprayed on a layer of glossy black airbrush color and then golden alclad paint until everything looked super pretty. Okay, now back to Flo, who was ready to start working on the knot. To make the shape really sturdy, she actually worked with a foam base that she glued hair on top of. My friend also constructed the other shapes of the knot just using hair and some hairspray. Don't ask me how she managed this, it was really fascinating to see it though. Finally, she glued her entire construction together, airbrushed it some more, and attached it with wire to the rest of the wig. Okay, so now it was time for the final fitting and makeup test. I quickly threw together an eye patch and it looked great. I was so happy with the final look. Okay, and now for the big reveal. Beidou, captain of the Crux. Ahoy, my mateys! I'm so happy how this costume turned out. Sewing is really not my strength and you cannot believe how scared I was at the beginning of the project. However, I'm really proud of the result. It was so much fun to create and I love that so many of my friends helped out this time. We will also upload a second video soon where we show you how we made my sword, the Blackcliff Slasher. And obviously, we also already went and did a little photo shooting in one of our local restaurants. This location totally reminded me of Mondstadt, don't you think so?
Cold beer after a hard day's work. Nothing like it.
This was a very intense crafting video and thanks so much to everyone who made it to the very end. I know this was a very different project, like there was no foam, there was no LEDs, there were no weapons involved and just a ton of sewing, and for me personally it was a very challenging project. As I said, like sewing is clearly not my strength and I was super scared at the beginning, but now I'm just so happy, so proud and just so relieved that I actually made it and that like I just so happy how Beidou looks like. I'm super proud and super happy. It's just the best. So thanks so much to everyone who supported me during this project, and Beidou is my favorite character in Genshin Impact and it was an honor to bring her to life. Thanks so much to Hoyoverse for this absolutely amazing collaboration. I hope you enjoyed it. And last but not least, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you have any questions, let me know. For example, what glue did you use? I mentioned it actually several times, but I'm sure some of you didn't notice it yet and want to know. And if you don't know what to write, as always, just write down Corgi and join the legendary Corgi squad. And in the next video, you will actually see how Benni made Beidou's absolutely amazing weapon, the Blackcliff Slasher. So stay tuned and see you in the very next video.